Dare I even ask what that was?
I was just feeling the music.
Okay. Is that the worm? What is it when it's like a worm but only with your arms? I was never cool, so I wouldn't know.
A loser.
Felt Recall episode number 40 is here. This is it. We're putting it together as we speak. My name is Kris, and across from me,
it's Patrick.
P. Magulon. Hey, I found out this week that your brother is a barber. Has that always been a thing?
No, that's a new thing.
A new thing? You just took this up?
Yeah.
Well, I guess
he's not a barber yet. He's apprenticing.
According to Instagram, he cuts hair.
Well,
okay.
He's getting there.
It puts you in an awkward position because now there's no excuse. I mean, what are we doing up there? You know, I mean, I get
good point.
I get that you're going for this whole, oh man, I'm so shabby chic look. But I mean, you're also a man that is already of ill repute. So maybe just cutting our hair would help. Just a little bit. Just a little bit. Make your mom actually have something to be proud of you for.
You know he doesn't live in the same town as me, right?
Right, I don't care. Just
I'm supposed to drive like 2 hours to go get a haircut.
I just consider it, a little ammo in the pocket that I'll pull out every now and then. You know me. It doesn't have to be true for me to make fun of you for it.
That's a good point.
I just harp and harp. Which is interesting. We have a young lady that we work with who I found out. I think everybody knew, but I found out recently that she took a James Yeager class. And so now every chance I get,
poor soul,
I just kind of rib her about it a little bit. Not that I really think you don't learn anything from James Yeager. I'm sure there's much to learn. But tonight I got the impression she actually believes that I don't think she learned anything. So I was trying to...
I got the impression she just doesn't like you.
Oh, that's true too. So like, every other woman in my life. Okay, before we get too much into it, let me give you the little rundown, schmundown. We're going to largely be going off the cuff here at the top, as if we don't already do that for every one of these we do. But we have an article that, unlike every other week, we have not read this one yet. And I got an alert on my phone just before we started recording from ESPN, and I said, okay, don't read this. We're gonna read this together as we can get real time reaction here. CNN just really is. From this angle, it appears CNN's going to tell us why all white people are racist, and they just don't know it.
I can't wait.
It's hard to imagine this stuff is true, but it is. So we'll get to that. Also, ESPN pulls an Asian American announcer from the Virginia game because his name's Robert Lee. So go figure. The American Bar Association wants to confiscate firearms from legal gun owners who have not committed crimes, and they don't want you to have a day in court to say why it shouldn't happen. Also, big data has discovered. Get ready for it. Are you ready? Are you listening? Are you sitting down? Are you ready?
I think so.
Turns out this whole global warming thing is true. There's now a study that speculates that maybe it's actually cooler now than it was during a middle warm period. We'll get to all that. I don't know. Basically, they're debunking Al Gore, and they're doing it in a very highbrow way. So we'll share that with you.
I feel like we had a really mild summer here so far.
Yeah.
Just saying. Maybe Al could fix that for us.
Have you heard the story that they want to rip down a statue in Portsmouth, Virginia, a Confederate statue, and replace it with Missy Elliott? Have you seen that they've got the petition of like 25,000 signatures?
Yeah, I mean, I saw it, but I thought it was a joke.
No, it's not a joke. It's not a joke. Obviously, those who don't care to do any homework are spreading it as if it's already real. There's a headline here that I got sent from a friend, and the headline reads that the Missy Elliott statue will replace the Confederate monument.
So they've already held a vote. That's what you're saying.
They've got 25,000 signatures.
Who's funding this?
Just bored people. They don't say exactly
who has
who
so
it is.
much money that they're like, you know what? You know what the world needs?
What's
a
the world
statue of Missy Elliott.
That's what they need.
Because she has contributed so much.
It's funny.
So many.
Because she hasn't contributed jack except being a successful black woman. And they want to complain about racism except Let's tear down the Portsmouth Confederate Monument. By the way, I was born in Portsmouth, Virginia, at the Naval Hospital. So this hits a little home. No, it doesn't. I don't remember anything about it.
Say, when's the last time you were there?
So a Virginia resident has said, let's tear down the Portsmouth Confederate Monument and replace it with a statue of Missy Elliott. Since we're picking people just because they're black and rappers, I actually have a better one, and he's also the Voda of the week. So we'll get to that and a whole lot more. But first, let's talk about this week's Felt Recoil Podcast Charity of Choice, and that is Team Gleason. The Gleason Initiative Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit with the mission to help provide individuals with neuromuscular diseases or injuries with leading-edge technology, equipment, and services. Steve Gleason played professional football for the New Orleans Saints. He was diagnosed with ALS. There's a great documentary about him that's free to watch if you have Amazon Prime. It's probably on Netflix, but I don't know for sure. And now he started the Gleason Foundation, and they're going to raise public awareness, and they have been for years now, about ALS. ALS is a degenerative disease, also known as Lou Gehrig's disease. If you don't know about it, go to feltrecoilshow.com. Click on the charities tab there on the bottom. You'll see it. It'll say charities of choice. Click on that. Go over and learn more about Team Gleason. Consider a donation today. All right. Increase your karma and pay less in taxes. You can't beat that. It's perfect. It's heaven. Okay. Here's the, and before we get too carried away, I do want to say, I hope I'm not out of line by sharing this. It's public information on Facebook, so I don't think it would be minded. But I am slated to be on the road tomorrow and tomorrow through the weekend for a class with Haley Strategic. And we got an email today that Travis Haley won't be in the class because his mother-in-law passed away. So thoughts and prayers to them. It's really, really sad. But obviously a lot to learn. Really looking forward to the trip otherwise. But since we're doing charity of choice, I will point out as well that his wife, if you follow Travis on Facebook, you'll be able to see this. His wife has started a fundraiser to research. What was it? Do you remember? I shouldn't have brought this up since I haven't properly researched, but his mother-in-law had a very rare form of cancer, and it attacks the plasma in your body. It can go undetected for years, and then you get into some significant pain, and then it's a long-term process to fight it. And so they're looking to raise a little bit of money for research for that. So
multiple myeloma.
There you go. Thank you. So if you're a fan of Travis Haley and you're a fan of giving back to people that need it, that'll be the alternative charity of choice. We give to both. Why not? So anyway, thoughts and prayers, Travis. Sorry to hear that. Wish we could see you this weekend, but life goes on and we understand. So take care of your family. We'll see you next time. All right. Here's the update from CNN that came through on my phone, and it's just, I don't know, man. Let me just read it, and then we'll discuss. CNN.
I'm going to strap in for this.
Quote, white supremacists by default. The angry men in Charlottesville were open about their hatred, but there are 4 types of ordinary people who made that tragedy possible. Just try and wrap your head around what this guy is saying. There are 4 types of ordinary people, not racists, not criminals, white and blue collar, hardworking Americans that made the tragedy possible. Okay.
I can't wait to see how I'm at fault.
I'll tell you, here's the thing. Having not read the article, and that was our agreement, is let's just read this behind the microphone and react to this in real time. But having not read it, I already assume this will be a blame game on why all white people are racist. And it's the strangest thing, and I don't want to prove their point, but I do want to point out that white people don't go around calling each other expletives, racial derogatory expletives, as terms of endearment, and we don't go around assuming other white people are our brethren. I don't call other white people brother when I meet them in public. We also don't hyphenate ourselves with an entire violent, racist, slave-owning continent in front of the word American before we introduce ourselves to people. It's the most absurd thing that this finger is suddenly being pointed at the white people of today for the sins of Democrat white people of 100 years ago. there were certainly Confederates who fought against the North who probably weren't for slavery. The argument would be hard to make to say the Civil War's primary conflict wasn't slavery. Some people want to twist it and say states' rights. Tomato, tomato, right? My point is, that doesn't mean you agreed with slavery because you fought for the Confederacy. It could very well mean that maybe, as we discussed last week, you felt stuck in the middle. And the only thing you couldn't imagine was fighting against your own family and your neighbors. So you just fought the people coming in trying to kill them. Maybe. I'm not justifying any of it. But sometimes you have to explore the idea of, what would I have done? It's so easy to Monday morning quarterback everybody. It's so easy to look back and go, well, slavery was evil and it was sinful. I saw a guy the other day post this thing. It was very, typical, the people that make you not want to go to church anymore because everything they do is judgy. It was very much one of those articles.
No, that doesn't happen. Come on.
Did we talk about this? The guy that wrote the article out of Canada, and he was talking about how Christians aren't allowed. According to this gentleman, if you're a Christian, you're not allowed to oppose mass immigration. Because Christ never said you'd live a safe life. So you're not allowed to be wary of the Muslim terrorists that are coming in here because Christ died on the cross. So you should expect nothing but death either. Now, this was not written by a Canadian man who now has a ministry in Saudi Arabia. It's not written by a Canadian man who now has a ministry in Palestine. It wasn't even written by a Canadian man who now has a ministry in Egypt. It was written by a Canadian man, snug as a bug in a rug, hiding behind the Canadian border, protected by the United States of America from every foreign invasion that could possibly be imagined, telling me that it's wrong for me to not want Muslims massively migrating into my country because I claim to be a Christian. Again, if he believes what he says,
he'll pack his bag.
See you in Saudi, pal. See you in Saudi, okay? Go down to Riyadh, crack open your holy book, start preaching the truth, and you tell me how that works out for you. And you have no excuse not to, because you just told me that I have a moral obligation to not expect safety as I practice my faith.
I think we need to get this guy on the show.
Go do it, you Yahoo. It drives me up a wall.
Find his name. I'll email him.
Drives me up a wall. I can give you his name. I might have to do some thumbing through the whole Facebook, but it just drives me up a wall. It's the same bug in my butt that I have with Black Rifle Coffee Company and their whole anti-Starbucks campaign where, you can't be for American veterans and drink Starbucks coffee because Starbucks coffee hates American veterans because they hired 10,000 refugees instead of hiring 10,000 veterans. And so we're going to hire 10,000 veterans if and only if we can get enough people to buy into this marketing campaign and purchase our product. Starbucks, by the way, released an ad this week where they've already hit their 10,000 mark years ahead of schedule, and they're going to do 15,000 more.
We should reach out to
military veterans.
Black Rifle Coffee and see how far away they are from hitting their mark.
9,990 would be my guess. Because I remember they bragged about the one. Yeah, we hired this guy. He's our latest veteran. Woo! And I posted
like one Facebook post.
Yeah, well, you got 9,999 more to go. Keep it up. And if you want to be like Starbucks, you now have to pay for his college education and the college education of either his spouse or child. His choice. So the point I'm making is, A, they're wrong to do that. They're wrong to skew the truth in order to sell their coffee. They are right, by the way, if you've noticed they're not being as vulgar and they're having the girls put a little bit more clothing on before they push it because they're trying to open retail stores now. And they're going to find the retail space won't work.
But seriously, do you think that that's all they're doing? Or did they hire a marketing company that came in and said, all right, guys, let's pump the brakes on the boobs everywhere?
Right. Yeah, here's an idea.
You want to make some money? We got to make this a little bit more family friendly.
Yeah, and I remember the first time I heard about them, and I was shopping their web store, and I thought to myself, I can have that on the counter. Can't have that on the counter in a house with kids. Anyway, all right. So they kind of distort the truth. Where did this go? I had that article pulled up for you. It's from Canada.thegospelcoalition.org. Paul Carter. He attended Moody Bible Institute and is a graduate of York University and a McMaster Divinity College. He's no slouch. He's no slouch. This is kind of one of the lines that really crawled under my skin. And I know we're way off the topic here, but I'll tie it all together. He says, I can't help but wonder if it isn't our attitude towards Muslim refugees. I have recently been disturbed by the attitude of some otherwise commendable Christian saints towards the influx of Muslim people from the Middle East. These dear saints, who might be well qualified to lead a prayer meeting, mentor young people, or serve in children's ministry, nevertheless seem blind to what the Bible has to say about refugees, mercy, and evangelism. They talk a lot about the increased dangers to public safety. They talk a lot about rape, terrorism, and Sharia law, but they don't seem to talk about loving our enemies, praying for our persecutors, or turning the other cheek. It seems very much as though we have a blind spot. So, okay. Where to begin? Here's the position Paul's put himself in, is just that he's not allowed to ever see anyone prosecuted for raping a member of his family. He has to turn the other cheek and forgive them. Paul buys into this idea that the theology of Christ is a lawless society where we all just live under theocracy. He would have Sharia law under the Christian banner.
That's what I was going to say. Is it sounds like that's why he's okay with Islam.
It's the worst idea possible. And then he goes on to tell us, you were refugees once too. The Bible frequently reminds the people of God of their lowly origins. And he goes on and on. And I'm sure this guy wrote this from a pure heart. He might have, a pretty in-depth argument about this. But to lecture anybody on the opposition to the mass migration of people we know are disproportionately committing crimes, to people we know are raping our children in restrooms in schools. They're in schools and they're holding girls down and they're sodomizing them in bathroom stalls. And this guy says that if you have a problem with that, you can't possibly be a Christian, that we need to forgive these kids and forget about it and turn the other cheek. Come on, man. You've got to be out of your mind. And so that kind of stuff is exactly in the same vein as the people who tell us that if you're white and you have anything negative to say about black people, you must be a thorough racist. If you're white and you have anything negative to say about the culture at large, you're probably a racist. And now it leads to, if you're white, you are a racist.
This dude sounds like the most Canadian guy ever.
He probably is. In Canada,
he's just way too friendly.
And if he wants to stay in Canada, here's a cause to take up, Paul. Here's a cause to take up for you. Paul Carter can start an organization to overturn the law of Canada that keeps it illegal to badmouth Islam, which means, by proxy, I would suggest it's illegal to preach the gospel in Canada. So he needs to be openly and publicly fighting to overturn laws that get people like Mark Stein and Ann Coulter and Ezra Levant sued in courts of law in Canada because they're willing to be critical of the Islamic faith. And if he can show me that he has an institute like that, I'll give him a pat on the back. But again, what a dangerous door to open. And to paint everybody with a broad brush, it is so typically liberal, it hurts. And so that is what CNN is doing as well. All right? CNN says the white supremacists of Charlottesville were at least honest about how much they hate black people, but there's also 4 ordinary types of people who are racist but don't know it.
I can't wait to find out which one you are.
We'll see. Let's see what they say. Again, caveat, we haven't read this. I'm going to read it right now in real time. Apologies for the raspy voice here, fighting off the allergies. I'll try and make it through, but here it goes. This is written by, what's the dude's name? John Blake. John Blake. All right. Shut up, CNN. CNN, blame President Trump for his tepid moral response. Call the neo-Nazis and white nationalists thugs.
Locations by that name.
What? Fill your Facebook and Twitter accounts with moral outrage. Tell Siri to be quiet. But the tragedy that took place in Charlottesville this month could not have occurred without the tacit acceptance of millions of ordinary, law-abiding Americans who helped create such a racially explosive climate, some activists, historians, and victims of extremism say. So, okay. Do you got that? You get that? You with me? Okay. The tragedy, the tragedy that took place in Charlottesville couldn't have happened without the acceptance of millions of ordinary, law-abiding Americans. It's easy to focus on the angry white men in paramilitary gear who looked like they were mobilizing for a race war. Race war! Weren't we going to do that? In Virginia, in the Virginia college town. But it's the ordinary people, the voters, who elected a reality TV star. So there you go. If you voted for Trump, you're now a white supremacist. Okay? Did you see what they did there? They just directly tied you to it. The voters who elected a reality TV star with a record of making racially insensitive comments. The people who move out of the neighborhood when people of color move in. So stupid. The family members who ignore a relative's anti-Semitism, who give these type of men room to operate. That was the twisted formula that made the... Oh, my God. Here we go. He's gonna play the Holocaust card. That was the twisted formula that made the Holocaust in Rwanda possible and allowed Jim Crow segregation to survive. Nice people looked the other way, while those with an appetite for violence did the dirty work. So... we're gonna. How lengthy is this? All right, there's 4 types of people.
It's pretty long.
It's pretty long. We won't get to all of it, but all right, let's stop here for just a second and let's talk about the Holocaust. If you think for a second that the majority of the German people were not overtly complicit in the Holocaust, you should read any book that exists about the Holocaust that was written by an actual survivor of the Holocaust. Okay, you can read the books and you'll see that these people were stuffed into train cars. And when the trains would stop in small German towns in the middle of nowhere, the Germans would come out and pelt them with bread and water and mock and laugh at the Jews. The German people firmly believed, in large, that they were the superior race, just as the Japanese did when they attacked us at Pearl Harbor. And just as a lot of people who live in African nations believe...
No. Hang on. Asians can't be racist. It doesn't work.
They can.
It doesn't work that way.
They can. And that's why Robert Lee is not going to be allowed to call the Virginia game at ESPN because he's such a racist.
Oh.
I believe that's what happened.
Oh, okay. Well, now it's starting to make sense.
Yeah, I can't back that up with any fact. I just want to say it.
No, but it sounds good.
Sounds great. Proves their point.
And if you can make it sound good, it's probably true.
It'll get on CNN.
We should be writers for CNN.
We probably could. I think they're stealing our stuff and reversing it and using it. So the German people were largely complicit in the Holocaust. This is how they made their living. You don't read a lot of... There should be thousands upon thousands of stories of German people en masse resisting that government. But they didn't. They didn't because they largely agreed with it. Okay? It's just the way it works. What was his other?
How else could you have something on that scale if the populace wasn't bought in on the idea? It doesn't happen.
Couldn't. Or you'd have Mao, who just simply starved everyone to death. The Chinese people never agreed with Mao, but they died as a result. Okay? Stalin murdering 20 million people. Similar scenario. They never agreed with him, so he would starve and murder them. With Hitler, it was... help me kill these people and we'll do it. And here's why they deserve to die.
Hey, when do we get to starve the Antifa people? I mean, they're asking for it.
Well, we can't because if you remember at Occupy, places were catering the Occupy movements.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Then he uses...
Didn't see any Chick-fil-A out there for some reason.
No, they were busy fighting the gays. I'm just kidding.
But you're not.
Right.
But you are.
Yeah, somewhat. Halfway. To use Rwanda, by the way, shows such a blinding ignorance. I brought this book out. It sits behind me on the shelf. We wish to inform you that tomorrow we will be killed with our families. Stories from Rwanda by Philip Gurovich. And this is the only book I've ever read about the Rwandan genocide. But everyone in Rwanda was black. They were all black. It was black people killing other black people because the other black guy had a wider nose than he thought he should have.
That's racist.
It's so absurd. There's no... what is the racism involved in Rwanda? And what is the tie that says this is what allowed Rwanda to happen? Rwanda happened because you had the Hutus who believed the Tutsis all deserved to die. you had an entire civilization who wanted to fight another civilization. But again, war-torn Africa, racism at play if you want to, but they were all black. So I don't know how racism gets tied into that. It's just really pure evil human beings. So,
well, but let's be honest. If you're a CNN writer, you're banking on the fact that people don't know history.
Well, they're going
to read that and they're going to go, yeah, heck yeah, Rwanda. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. And they have no idea what's actually going on or how that relates to the point the guy's trying to make.
Mark Nason is a political activist and a history professor at Fordham University in New York City. And he says, quote, you have to have millions of people who are willing to be bystanders who push aside evidence of racism, Islamophobia, or sexism. You can't have one without the other. I don't know what that means. So you can't, I think what he's saying is you can't have, what are they blaming us for again?
I thought that was potato chips.
What? So you can't
only have one. You can't
just have one. You can't have just one.
God, we suck at
Once
marketing.
You pop, you never stop.
Whatever. Same thing.
Here's where he's real wrong. Nason says we are a country with a few million passionate white supremacists and tens of millions of white supremacists by default. By default. Jeez.
How does that work exactly?
You're white. Many people prefer to focus on the usual suspects after Charlottesville happens, the violent racial extremists who are so easy to condemn. Yet there are 4 types of ordinary people who also play a part in the country's racial divisions. Yeah, Barack Obama and his family. Oh, no. That's not what they're talking about. Sorry. Nason and others say they go like this. Number 1 is the down-low segregationists. Many of the white racists who marched in Charlottesville were condemned because they openly said they don't believe in integration or racial equality. But millions of ordinary white people have been sending that message to black and brown people for at least half a century. They send it with their actions. They don't want to live next to or send their children to school with black or brown people. Historians say. Busing, a nationwide campaign to end school segregation by shipping students of color to white schools, collapsed in large part because of fierce opposition by white parents. White flight was white families fleeing city neighborhoods after people of color moved in, and that helped create the modern suburbs. All right, number 2, those who say yes, but. President Trump's critics blasted him for not coming out strong enough against the white racists who marched in Charlottesville. Trump initially denounced the egregious display of hatred, bigotry, and violence on many sides. It was the many sides qualifier that infuriated some people. They wanted an unequivocal denunciation of racism from a leader. Trump's many sides response, though, wasn't that abnormal in the context of U.S. history. It used to be the norm for white political leaders to draw moral equivalence between racists and those who suffered from their acts of brutality, historians say. It's the yes, but rhetorical maneuver. Condemn racism, but add a qualifier to diminish the sincerity of what you just said. The Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. ran into this yes, but response so much that he wrote about it in his famous letter from Birmingham jail. Have you noticed, by the way, how many times historians have been quoted, but it's just as ambiguous historians? Historians say this, historians say that. I don't see any citations about the actual
Check
historians.
Something real quick. Hang on a second.
Yeah, go ahead.
Right at the top says CNN.com. So I'm kind of curious as to why you're shocked.
Fair enough, and we'll move on. So we have the lowdown, down low segregationists. That's right. Those are the people who wouldn't openly call for segregation, but we move when black people move to our neighborhood. Let me just tell you something. We got a black family that lives right over the fence from us, and their white neighbor is the guy I can't stand. So if I move out of my house, do I get blamed because I have black neighbors?
You're like a Rwandan style racist.
Yes, because I hate the other white guy.
Right.
Yes. Get along well with the black family. He's really, really nice. Talks to my boys. He's the kind of guy that collects stuff and has old trucks in his yard and all that, so the boys love it, and he's real nice to them. The druggy white guy next to him is the one I have the issue with.
Funny how that works.
If only that white guy had a black guy's nose, I think I could kill him, and then CNN would blame that on white people, but not on me for killing him.
It would have something to do with the Holocaust. I'm not sure.
It would be easy.
Just trust me.
My goodness, this is the world we live in. Number 3 is those who choose chaos, like CNN. There's a famous line from the classic film Casablanca. A police officer is closing down a casino, declaring, "I'm shocked to find that gambling is going on in here," all while pocketing his casino winnings as they're being handed to him on the sly. Okay. I'm not really sure where they're going with this. That line could apply to Trump supporters, who say they're frustrated by the president's statements on race since Charlottesville erupted. How could you be shocked? This is who he is. This is what he does, says Anderson, an Emory University professor. Mexicans are rapists and criminals. That's what he said in his first speech. No, he didn't. Their complicity.
He has that in quotes, by the way.
Yeah, he does. Their complicity comes in the form of self-denial instead of owning it. For those who say they voted for Trump, despite his intolerance, Anderson offers this analogy. Minister Louis Farrakhan. Yeah, he's definitely a racist, so let's see how they use that. Farrakhan is a leader in some parts of the black community because of his message of self-help and black empowerment. I wonder why they didn't use Malcolm X. If they're going where I think they're going, they should have used Malcolm X. But anyway, he reached peak popularity in the 90s, but he also preached anti-Semitic, anti-white, anti-Catholic, and anti-homosexual rhetoric. Yeah, Malcolm X did the same thing. And the organization he leads, the Nation of Islam, has taught that white people are inherently evil. If he was running for office and black people voted in droves for him, the narrative would be they're supporting a racist. Okay. Ta-Nehisi Coates? I don't know. Coates is an acclaimed writer on race relations and made a similar argument after Trump's election in an interview with Vox's Ezra Klein. Well, there's a guy you can trust, where he responded to commentators who said not all white voters who supported Trump endorsed all of his ideas. As my buddy said, is that what you said to the followers of Louis Farrakhan? No, nobody says that to the followers of Louis Farrakhan. No, they blasted him as an anti-Semite, which he is, and say, how can people follow this bigoted message? Let me ask you this. Does this idea make every black person who voted for Barack Obama, whose first time voting was when they voted for Barack Obama, are all of those people as racist as the Trump supporters CNN is trying to point to now? The answer has to be yes,
sure,
right?
According to CNN.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, Oprah had been on TV for decades and never endorsed a presidential candidate until Barack Obama ran for office. She'd never been involved in politics at all. But when another black person got into politics that she felt she could endorse, she did it. Blindingly did it. Couldn't tell you a thing about the guy and did it. She knew, by the way.
He's a hip guy.
She had gone to his same church, if you remember, where Barack Obama's racist pastor, Reverend Jeremiah Wright, a flaming racist, had said all the dirty things he said to an extent that Oprah left the church, but Barack Obama stayed. And she still endorsed him. It's worth thinking about. It's just funny when you consider articles like this, how the shoe is suddenly on the other foot and they are freaking out. Yet, their evidence isn't substantiated by anything. Their claims aren't substantiated by any evidence. There's no evidence that Trump is a raging racist. Trump is a loose-lipped moron, in my opinion. I don't think the guy is fit for high office leadership. He's not doing a very good job at thinking before he speaks. However, I firmly believe he has the country's best interest in mind, and I firmly believe he's not a racist. Bumbling idiot? I think so.
He's been given
Racist,
awards
no.
from all kinds of organizations for his hiring of people of color and all these things. So it's like, it's really
NAACP and all that.
Yeah, sure. So it's really funny to me that now all of a sudden he's a racist, and they have all these things that they can reference where he's been given these awards. And they've got, I saw a collage on the internet the other day, and it was just pictures of Donald Trump and basically every famous black person ever.
Oh yeah.
Like, I mean, going back into probably what I would assume is the early 80s. And it's all the way up to the more or less until he decided to run for office, where he's, I mean, there's a picture of him with 50 Cent, for crying out loud. So
what?
All of a sudden now he's a racist. It's like, come on, guys.
Well, look, you're only allowed in the club as long as you play by the rules. These aren't people who really, as we've talked about, they don't really stand on much principle. They mainly get by convincing everyone around them that everyone else believes what they say, they should believe, as it were. Anyway, all right. Number 4, those who look the other way. Ari Cohen knows something about the cost of hate. When he looked at images of neo-Nazis chanting, "Jews will not replace us," in Charlottesville, he thought of his grandfather, Zalman Cohen. He was living in rural Romania in 1944 when the Nazis rounded him up with the help of his neighbors and sent him to a death camp. His grandfather survived, moved to the United States, and lived until he was 90, but he never returned to Romania. Many scholars have been vexed by the same question. When they examine genocidal events like the Holocaust, many come to the same conclusion. Never underestimate the ability of ordinary people to look away. Some do it with family members. Cohen says that hundreds of white racists who descended on Charlottesville must have family or friends who noticed their behavior beforehand. He suspects that some refuse to confront them. There's this wink and nod. Everyone knows that this person is going down a dangerous path, and people passively go along with it. They don't want to rock the boat. This is family or a friend. It's hard to distance yourself from people you care about. Blah, blah, blah. It goes on and on. So there's your 4 types. You got the down low segregationists. Those who say yes, but, those who choose chaos, and those who look the other way.
This article closes out by saying,
go ahead.
If you want to know why those white racists now feel so emboldened, it may help to look at all the ordinary people around you, your neighbors, your family members, your leaders. But first, start by looking at yourself.
That's me. All right, let me do that. Let me look at myself for just a second.
Which one of these 4 are you, by the way? Because when you read the first one, I thought, well, yeah, that's him. And then, because nothing says Kris like down low segregationist.
Right. Yep.
And then I thought, then you read number 2, and I thought, he is a yes, but guy. He's like, that racism.
Yeah.
And then, and then number 3, of course, you're a pretty chaotic guy.
Yeah, it's true.
And then you read number 4, and I thought, well, Kris may be one of those guys that looks the other way. So
I just give the nod and the wink.
I thought you were all 4 of them as you read them, and each one kind of trumped the previous one. So now I'm just not sure.
I see what you did there. That'll trump the previous one. I'm going to choose number 3 and choose chaos. And I'm going to say that I feel like this is what CNN and the media is. You know what they are? They're the skinny punk on the sideline who encourages the fist fight. Real life story. I remember being in, I think, 9th grade, and there were 2 boys in my PE class that we knew were going to fight after school.
3 o'clock by the oak tree.
Not true. Lunchtime. It was lunchtime. Yes. We knew they were going to meet in the locker room and fight when everybody got back from chapel.
Winner takes all.
That's right. Here's how it plays out. I show up at the locker room, curious. I'd never seen a fist fight before. And I see the son of one of the school's faculty members, and I cannot remember who it was, but he's standing at the doorway, and he goes, "If you come in here, you can't tell anybody about this." And I go, "Yeah, man, sure, of course." And so I squeeze in. There are probably a dozen guys just crammed into this little concrete, hallway, if you will. You know how locker rooms are. As soon as you walk in, it's cold tile on your feet and concrete walls, cinder blocks, painted white usually. And I peer around the corner, and there's this new kid, and I was new as well. He was the first guy I ever saw without a shirt on, where you could see every muscle on his body, and you're kind of in that developing age where you're like, that is one strong dude, strong. And he is standing across from a lanky kid who had him by probably 6 inches high, floppy black hair and glasses. And the kid with the glasses took his glasses off. And I remember even as a kid at 15 thinking, how's he going to see to fight this guy? And the rumor was that the ripped guy was a kickboxer. That was the rumor. You know how that goes. And
probably just watched a lot of Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Probably. But kickboxer dude basically goes, look, man, I'm going to give you a chance. You can walk away. And the guy's like, nope, we're going to fight it out. And he goes, okay. And he gets in his position, and lanky dude comes at him. And I'm telling you, Patrick, there was no building tension. There was no
one and done, huh?
Yeah. I mean, there was nothing. There was no real climax. There was a loud pop. And it's probably the only time in my life I remember seeing somebody's nose get broken. And that blood went everywhere. Just all over this kid's chin, down to his chest. And I was like, whoa. And we ran. Like, everyone ran. Boom, gone. Well, lunch is over. We go to our next class. And at the end of the next class, the principal comes on. I need the following young men to report to M105, which was the main building, room 105 in the main building. And we go into the room, and there's the principal, and then there's that faculty kid, and the principal goes, I cannot remember this kid's name. I can see him, but I can't remember his name. But the principal goes, Mr. So-and-so informed me, and I thought, son of a, that was the guy that was telling everybody not to talk. It was the guy telling everybody not to talk, and he's saying like a jaybird. That is the perfect example of modern day media. They want the fight. They want to watch the fight. They want to be able to report on the fight, but they want to sell commercials culpability
while
in the
they
fight.
Broadcast the fight.
Absolutely right. If you think CNN and Fox News aren't salivating at the idea of black nationalists from Black Lives Movement and white supremacists and white nationalists headbutting in Charlottesville and headbutting in Boston and everywhere else, you are out of your mind and you're not paying attention. They want it. They're creating it.
How the hell else are you going to sell blood thinners and Greek yogurt?
Great point.
I mean, you need a riot on TV so you can get those commercials out there.
So now you have CNN publicly saying, this proves that CNN believes all white people are racists. They just may not know it yet. And you have to figure out what level racist you are and then apologize for it and fix it. When in reality, if we're being honest, there's no more racist culture in America today outside of the black culture. And I know that makes me sound like a real jackass, but I don't know how you argue against that. There is a culture of black people, not all of them, but a large swath of black people in this country who use derogatory terms to each other, who glorify breaking the law, who openly talk about the oppression of white people against them and how all white people are inherently racist. And then you have the black people like Lil Wayne, who lives a life where he raps about breaking the law and doing drugs, but then openly says there is no racism. A white cop saved my life when I was a kid. I don't know what racism is. And then you have the media who comes in and says Lil Wayne's wrong, and the black people who believe all white people are racist, who believe white people. And here's the thing that's hard to justify. Did you see the list of demands from Black Lives Matter? That girl who said
it's like 10 of them.
White people should move out of their home. Well, what do I do now? Because I have black neighbors, and CNN told me to be racist if I moved. So I have to stay in my neighborhood because black people are here. What am I going to do? Damned if I do, damned if I don't. I'm willing. No, I can't. Okay. I don't know what to do. We talked a couple weeks ago, maybe just last week, about the fact that if you'll just turn the TV off, stop listening to these people, you have to make up your mind that these people are all lying to you. CNN is making things up, throwing it out on the air and hoping you believe it so that it creates conflict, and then they can report the conflict. That's the way these people work. That's what they do.
I don't know that conflict is the right word. I think it is division.
Sure.
At its deepest core. And it's actually working exactly how they want it to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's terrifying.
Which is it's very disturbing.
Yeah,
because that means people are so dumb that they just hear it. And I think it goes back to the principle of if you just repeat the lie long enough, everybody will believe it. Mm-hmm. I feel like that's exactly what's happening here.
Well, it's a funny thing about Charlottesville that I was seeing black friends on Facebook and white friends alike. But I'm thinking of one. I'm thinking of two particular people. One was white, one was black, and they both made the same joke about how the white nationalists weren't protesting in the ghettos of Charlottesville because they knew what would be waiting for them, meaning violence. They're not going to go there because those people will react violently and hurt you. So apparently the people in the ghettos don't believe in someone's right to protest without violent reproach. Okay, fine. I get that it's just a joke. I get it. But the joke is that if you go into a black neighborhood as a white supremacist, the black people will be violent towards you, that black people aren't understanding. They have no room and no tolerance for that. Okay, fine. But here's what's interesting.
What's that? Okay, so that's a joke. So what's comedy? Comedy is the truth,
The exaggeration of the truth, right?
tragedy,
Yeah.
and time. Right? So
Sure.
you put those together. So my point is there's an element of truth in what they're saying.
Yes.
And that's why it's funny.
Many a truth is spoken in jest, as they say.
Exactly.
But my takeaway from it was that then what happened was supposedly one of the white supremacists purposefully plowed into a crowd of people, and suddenly that wasn't funny anymore. The idea of violent interaction over your belief system was damn disgraceful all of a sudden, was absurd and unthinkable all of a sudden. But moments before, we were joking about the fact that if you took that belief system into the ghetto would welcome you with violence, and you would be deserving of it. Because the ghetto has a political belief that doesn't line up with yours. So you deserve what came to you. Making sense? Am I
can't
way
argue with
off
that.
there? So it was interesting to me, not justifying it in any way and not saying, ha, 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 see, you're wrong. But what I am saying is there shouldn't be room for us to act like, well, if they came here, kill them. If they came here, kill them. And then to be surprised when they do it, you know? So, and not that it was, overreaction or of any sort. Well, let me back up. I'm not trying to say that they did it in the sense of the black people's antagonizing this guy. What I'm saying is violence against other people for their belief system and for their belief system alone is absurd and unacceptable. I don't like
In any direction.
I don't like white nationalists as much as I don't like CNN, as much as I don't like Black Lives Matter, as much as I hate Louis Farrakhan, Jeremiah Wright, as much as I think Barack Obama built the powder keg upon which all of this sits. Okay, when you examine his presidency through the perspective of white Americans, and you see a guy who defended Henry Louis Gates up in Cambridge by saying the police acted stupidly, and you see a guy who shrugged off ISIS, and you see a guy who shrugged off Occupy Wall Street, in fact, embraced them, thought their cause worthy. You see a guy who celebrated Black Lives Matter, and you see a guy who shrugged it off when police officers were being murdered in the street and acted as if, well, violence is violence, and we got to address this. What Obama did that always drove me crazy was he always found a way to blame the victims. And he did this victim blaming, victim shaming thing with police officers that if you did it with a woman who'd been raped while wearing a miniskirt, everyone would know you for the just complete jackass that you were. But for some reason, Obama was allowed to go, well, hey, look, I know that cop got shot in the back of the head while sitting in his patrol car, but the fact of the matter is there's always been a negative history with law enforcement minorities, and we're going to bridge that gap. That has nothing to do with it. It has nothing to do with it. You get on TV and you say, if my son were to look like you, simply because, my son would be black and you're black, like you did with Trayvon, if my son were to look like you, stop being violent to police officers. Why didn't he ever get up and tell black youth how to act? All he ever did was tell white people how to not respond to black youth. Get up and tell the black youth how to act.
Well, while we're talking about things that happened or didn't happen under Obama's watch, it's curious to me that suddenly Confederate statues in what I would consider largely Democrat holdout areas didn't bother anybody through 2 terms of his presidency. No one gave a crap about any of those statues.
Right.
In downtown Baltimore or anywhere else. And suddenly, now that Trump is in office, suddenly those are these monuments to racism that are empowering and emboldening whatever these fringe groups are now. I don't even know what they all are. I see them marching with the flags. I don't even know what these flags are.
Right.
I consider myself sort of a student of flags because I think flags in the history of the world are an important thing.
What a loser.
I know. And I see these things and I go, yeah, what is that? I don't know what that. Did they just come up with that yesterday? Because that's not a thing.
Yeah.
So my point is, though,
but that could be.
Maybe.
In your defense,
probably. Yeah. But my point is, none of these things seem to bother anyone before. And so a part of me wonders if the removal of the Confederate battle flag from the State House here in South Carolina by Nikki Haley
started
this whole thing.
Absolutely.
Now, that happened 2 years ago now.
Yeah.
Right? Just over 2 years ago.
Yep.
The flag was, well, those people were shot in the church.
Yeah.
And then shortly thereafter, Nikki Haley says, well, we got to take the flag down.
Yeah, and you know what, though? It's exactly right, because when Nikki Haley suddenly was against the Confederate flag, it was exactly what everyone else is doing, is political posturing. She knew that the political winds were shifting, and if she could show a moderate position on something like that, as inconsequential as that, but somehow heated at the time, if she could take a strong, moderate stand and say, I am a Southerner, but I believe it should come down, she knew that would work in her favor, and it did. It got her a job.
Yep.
She didn't do anything. I mean, she brought Boeing here. She did good stuff for the state, but then she kind of turned into this weird populist, kind of
she
out for fame politician.
Not a whole lot of legislation moved around while she was there because she opposed everything the legislature did and vice versa. So, I mean, that was kind of a wash of her term.
But that was the beginning of this sentiment in the country, that suddenly when a certain person, and it's so funny because we've never done it with the Muslims.
But so my point there is what changed? What did that fix? Okay. Those 9 people that were murdered that had nothing to do with that flag.
Right.
They're not going to be brought back because they took a flag off of a freaking flagpole.
Well, it cut the murder rate by white supremacists by 8/9.
Right.
Because, 9 in 1 in Charlottesville.
Oh. Got it. No.
Just trying to help.
No.
Okay.
But my point is just the same. Nothing will change by the removal of all these other statues.
No.
And to take it another step further, now they're smashing statues of Christopher Columbus.
Right.
Abraham Lincoln, and just about anybody else they come across. There's like a statue, I think it's like St. Francis or someone somewhere. They poured red paint all over it and acted like...
Thought it was a white Confederate statue, and it wasn't.
What the hell is wrong with these people? So now it's just a free-for-all.
Well, and isn't it interesting, though, and the guy at Vice that wrote the article about blowing up Mount Rushmore, because he believed the people on Mount Rushmore raped people, which I'd love to hear some sort of, I guess, I don't know. Anyway, look, it's so telling of what they're trying to do, which is indeed to rewrite history. And I'm not saying that loosely and because, that's an easy blanket statement to make. But think of it this way. The Confederates were Democrats, and they're the same Democrats that exist today. But the Democrats and the American left share something in common with ISIS, where they're now tearing down historical monuments. And the reason they're tearing down historical monuments isn't because they find them offensive. It's because it allows them to tell a version of a story that's harder to argue. So if the American left can tear down all the Confederate statues and then get up and go, well, the right in this country has always been anti-minority and they've always been racist. Well, then we can't point and go, whoa. Look at these people. This is who these people were, and they were Democrats, and here's who they were.
Well, that's why the media wants to help control the narrative. It's
right.
Part and parcel. It's the same thing.
And so let's think for a second about this. And I hate to always go to the parallel, but let's just think for a second about the fact that we've had Islamic terrorists in this country attacking Americans on our soil openly for more than 16 years now. And there hasn't been a movement yet to remove Islamic monuments around the country because nobody wants to tie the hate of Islam to the hate of Islam's founder. But since we're smashing up Christopher Columbus statues, can we take a quick pop quiz? Why did Columbus want to sail westward from Spain to get to India?
I think he was looking for casinos.
Ah, okay. Wrong. Different Indians. So
I don't know then.
If you read the history, the Muslims of Christopher Columbus's time had captured the eastern coast of Spain, or the eastern border, excuse me. You weren't getting out of Spain to the east. You weren't. You were going to be slaughtered. They were going to steal your things. There had to be a passage to the west, and you couldn't go around Africa for Muslim pirates. So there had to be a direct route west. And Columbus believing...
When's Disney going to make that movie?
That would be cool. Columbus believing that the earth was round thought, well, I'll just sail west, and I'll circle around, and then I'll be in India. And he found a whole new world because Muslims had conquered the eastern border of Spain. The history of Islam is so violent and just so overtly racist. And we're not going around screaming about that. We ignore real history because it just doesn't feel as good to admit that everybody's got their scars. It's like that guy we were talking about from his article about how, we can't oppose massive immigration and we can't oppose open borders because Christ died on the cross. He's cut from the same cloth in the sense that there's people out there that believe that, they want to give you this measure of the Bible is the infallible word of God, and the people in the Bible are to be revered and almost deified in a way. And then when you bring up the fact that, or really more what I'm trying to say here is they use all of that to construct this series of very strict rules on people of the faith and to say, here are the things you are and are not allowed to do. And if you do them, you might not be saved. You can't enjoy these certain things and still be a Christian. Well, if you're actually willing to read your Bible, you start to understand that everybody in it was a real screw up. A lot of bad people. David had a dude murdered so he could sleep with his wife. And this is the short of it. Sent the guy off to war so he could die. And then started sleeping with his wife. Moses murdered somebody. Noah, the only man allowed to live after the flood, got drunk with his family. And then I don't know what it means, but the Bible says his kids looked on him backwardly while he was naked later on. There's just a lot of weird stuff going on, It's
pretty weird.
Yeah, and just a lot of screw ups. And I think that the whole point is that we're all flawed individuals. Anyway, all that just ties back to the idea that you get these people who believe that their way must absolutely be the truth. And if they find a chink in that armor, then they're willing to do everything they can to rewrite it so that it is true again. Hence why they're teaching the realignment theory in colleges today, where they are legitimately teaching kids that, the Democrats who supported, the Democrats who opposed civil rights legislation, were more than there were Republicans, and the Republicans opposed civil rights. And all right, I'm telling you this all backwards. Hold on.
You got it, buddy.
I got it here. What they're teaching is that the Republicans may have supported civil rights legislation. And yes, the Democrats overwhelmingly denounced civil rights legislation, but there was a flip in the parties. And so the Democrats who opposed legislation for black people and for civil rights became Republicans because the Republican Party ideals lined up more with what they really believed. which is an absurd thing to think about because it doesn't make any sense. But that is something they're teaching in college classrooms.
I know
today.
you saw the debate between Ben Shapiro and I don't know how to say his name.
Chank. I think
Is
it's
it Chank?
I think so.
Chank?
Chank Uger.
Chank Uger? And
From the Young Turks.
Ben Shapiro absolutely just hands that guy his face.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Over realignment theory in that debate, and he made a lot of good points about how voting started flipping long before the Civil Rights Act in the South and that sort of thing. And it was so if you want to know some history about that, he gives it to you on the real.
Yeah.
I mean, he is. Because that guy, he doesn't really play around. When he gets fired up, he's 100 miles an hour. He's right all the time, and you better keep up.
Sharp
So you
as
should
attack,
check that
man.
out.
Sharp as attack. Yeah, you could do a whole show just on the history of the Democrats and their voting on civil rights issues versus the history of Republicans and their voting. Just remember this: the guy that replaced Jefferson Davis. When Jefferson Davis went to be the Democrat president of the Confederacy, the guy that replaced him was a black guy, a Republican, voted in by the people. Okay? All right? That's all you need to know. All right. So anyway, if you're white, you're racist. What an amazing time to be alive. And who knows where it ends up. But it doesn't look good. I can tell you that. And if they're wanting a fight, I think they're about to get it. And that's too darn bad. Okay. We are long-winded. But real quick, something from the NRA's Institute for Legislative Action. Keep your eyes on this. This is terrifying. Over the years, the American Bar Association has defended the due process rights of some very unpopular groups, including terrorists, terror suspects, and convicts on death row. The organization also advocates the stringent due process standards be applied to the disposition of positive rights, such as universal access to health care and welfare benefits, blah, blah, blah. At the 2017 American Bar Association's annual meeting, held August the 10th through the 13th, delegates adopted Resolution 118B, which, quote, urges state, local, territorial, and tribal governments to enact statutes, rules, or regulations authorizing courts to issue gun violence restraining orders. Gun violence restraining orders force a gun owner to surrender their firearms to law enforcement or authorize law enforcement to seize said firearms absent, without a disqualifying criminal conviction. So under the resolution, governments are encouraged to implement legislation to allow for confiscation even after ex parte orders, which are orders that can be issued without the target of the restraining order present to provide evidence in their own defense. Important point of note, by the way. Ex parte means that it can also mean acting as a third party. That person can have no involvement in the case whatsoever. So interesting. Think about it. Fleshing out the proposal, the ABA resolution states that the legislation should contain the following three provisions. That a person with documented evidence that another person poses a serious threat to himself or herself or others may petition a court for an order temporarily suspending the respondent's possession of a firearm or ammunition. Number two, that there shall be a verifiable procedure to ensure the surrender of firearms and ammunition pursuant to the court order. And number three, that the issuance of the gun violence restraining order shall be reported to appropriate state or federal databases in order to prevent respondent from passing a background check required to purchase a firearm or obtain a firearms license or permit while the restraining order is in effect. So, short version is, every lawyer in America believes that it should be okay for anyone to go to a court and tell them that your Second Amendment rights should immediately be revoked in the court without notifying you, without holding a trial, without due process that's definitely afforded to you under the Constitution of the United States. Without any of that, the court can say absolutely. In a day and age where the American Bar Association is also fighting, by the way, for illegal immigrants to be allowed to practice law in federal courtrooms and at the same time barring federal law enforcement agents from those same courts so that the illegals can practice without fear of retribution. let that sink in. They're also saying that selectively people should be denied their Second Amendment rights under the Constitution. If they can take one, they can take them all. If they take one, they can take them all. Remember that famous back and forth with Trey Gowdy and whoever that idiot was he was talking to, where he said, what other right can be chilled without due process? What other right in this country can be chilled without due process? And that person couldn't come up with one. And it's a fantastic question. What other rights can they take from you? Can they suddenly tell you where you can and can't go to church? Can they suddenly tell you what religion you're allowed to believe? Can they suddenly come in and seize your property? No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Can they suddenly rescind Amendments 13 and 14? You want to be worried about your racism? What happens when that happens? If a court is arbitrarily allowed to just rescind and chill your constitutional rights, there's no stopping what they can or cannot do. It's an amazing time to be alive and watch America fall apart. That's at least what it feels like. Okay, there's a petition like we talked about in Portsmouth to take down the Portsmouth, Virginia Confederate Monument.
Let's do it.
They want to put Missy Elliott up in its place, flip it and reverse it or whatever. I don't know what merit she has for a monument, but if they don't choose Missy, and they're only choosing her because she's black, if they don't choose her, they should choose this guy. It is our Voda of the week. If you're not familiar,
I thought you were going to say Clarence Thomas.
Never going to happen.
Okay, sorry.
He was a good person.
Sorry.
Can't be a good person and get your own monument.
Okay.
Half of the
Got
rule.
it.
Also can't be white. There's two parts to the rule. Can't be good, can't be white. Okay? Stalin statues in Seattle, keep them up. Jefferson statues in Virginia, tear them down. Make sense? You with me?
Perfect.
Okay.
Perfectly nonsensical.
This week's Voda of the week is a Portsmouth rapper charged in a heroin ring, busted, who posted video about how, quote, dumb hard he works selling drugs. It's hard to be a heroin dealer. This is from Pilot.
Is that a term? You work dumb hard?
It's his term. It's hard to be a heroin dealer. If you don't agree, just listen to Portsmouth's own Radu Schoolfield, one of 12 people listed in a federal indictment unsealed. In a video posted in January on YouTube, Schoolfield, better known as rapper Big Face Dollar. I got to tell you a quick side note. My mom took my son to Wendy's to get him a Frosty. And the lady came on the intercom. She goes, I'll be right with you. And my daughter's name is Abby. And my son yelled back, Abby, that's my sister's name. I'll be right with you. True story. All right.
Okay.
Big Face Dollar boasted on YouTube about all the work he was putting in to selling drugs. Quote, I've been going dumb hard all week. In the trap all night, no sleep. Got a new plug and it's going cheap. And I put my dogs on like we gonna eat. I don't know what any of that means, which means I'm either white or old. Trap is a common term for
both.
Yeah, it's a common term for a place where drugs are sold. And plug is a common reference to a drug dealer's source of supply. Okay, wait. So now that we know that, let's read it again. So trap is the place where drugs are sold, and plug is the drug dealer's supply source. I've been going dumb hard all week. In the trap, so in the place where I sell drugs, all night, no sleep. Got a new plug, new source of supply of drugs, and it's going cheap. I put my dogs on like we're going to eat. Maybe he's Chinese. Dogs on like we're going to eat dog. Right,
Obama ate a dog one time.
Yeah. That's true. Special Assistant U.S. Attorney John Butler declined to comment on the video, which has been viewed more than 23,000 times before the indictment was unsealed in U.S. District Court. Defense attorney Andrew Sachs, Schoolfield's attorney, did not immediately respond to requests for comment. The video starts with an interview of Schoolfield by 103 Jams DJ.
The Jams!
Get this. Speaking of racism and how black people are allowed to be racist, but we're not. Schoolfield was interviewed by 103 Jams DJ Jack of Spade.
Come on. Come on. That's not real.
It's real.
You're making that up.
Kid you not. Oh, yeah, all right, here, wait. We'll see if we can play it. Yeah. All right, let's see. Where you at?
What up,
Oh,
it's
there he is.
DJ
Hello.
Jack and Spade 103 Jams. We on deck. But it's not about me today, man. It's all about my big homie, Big Face Dollar, man. We about to work premiere that new song, Dumb Hard. What's good, fam?
Everything good, baby. 2 up, 2 down, 10 toes in the ground. You already know.
No doubt you about to light the city up, man. What's good?
You know it, man. Everything good, baby. We out Linko today, man. P-Town stand up, 757 stand up. Y'all come out, show some love, baby.
You heard it. Pull up on him.
Here's the best part, by the way, of this video. The DJ isn't even talking into a microphone.
It doesn't sound like he is.
They're trying to play this like he's being interviewed on an actual radio station, but he's such a loser that he can't even get onto the urban hip hop station. Which, by the way, you gotta be real. If you're actually on a label of some sort and you're not getting play on an urban hip hop station, you must be doing something terribly wrong. Anyway, trying to make it look like that's what's going on here, and the DJ isn't even talking into a microphone. And I mean, he's basically sitting across the table from him, just talking to him. But the rapper, Big Face Dollar guy, the dumb hard worker, is talking into a microphone.
You already know.
No doubt you about to light the city up, man. What's good?
You know it, man. Everything good, baby. We out Linko today, man. P-Town stand up, 757 stand up. Y'all come out, show some love, baby.
You heard it. Pull up on him when you see him, man. The boy's on fire here. Beast, I said that. Your boy Jack
I mean, he's trying to talk into it, but he's not even talking into a microphone. He's just sitting at the table. Unbelievable. And then,
No, I'm sure I get it.
all right,
I ain't leaving till the song goes.
all right. Let's teach our kids to act like gangsters. That's smart. God bless. It drives me crazy to see all these kids in these videos. Where are their parents? I don't even know what any of that means. I'll tell you, man. Ignorance this is going to sound unbelievable. Ignorance is such a learned trait. It is such a learned trait to go out there and be an idiot like these guys are acting. And then you put all the kids in the video and then you wonder why you're stuck in a rut. Unbelievable. All right. Anyway, our Voda here. Where'd my article go? Where are you at, Voda? Where are you at? I'm right here. Oh, you know what happened? I had to click over to YouTube, so I lost it. Anyway, so he rapped about selling drugs in the trap house, and now he's being indicted by the federal government. Prosecutors said the group of 12, he was a part of a large drug trafficking organization operated by his relative, Leroy Purdue. I love that this guy's rapper name is, what was it, Big Face Dollar?
Yep.
Big Face Dollar, and he's got like Uncle Leroy. I love it.
Big Face is one word.
Oh, my bad.
And Dalla is spelled D-O-L-L-A.
Well, of course it is. Why spell it right? Because you can't. Prosecutors said the group was responsible for putting more than 100 kilograms of heroin on the streets of Portsmouth over the last decade. It's more than 250,000 doses. By the way, did you know that drug dealers purposefully try to kill someone with their drugs? Did you know that?
I have heard that.
They will kill at least one person.
It makes them the drugs more credible.
More credible to the addicts.
Better drugs.
The addicts think you're getting that much higher.
Oh, yeah.
So, yes, they will basically taint one dose, if you will, one cell worth, I don't know, one bag of it, and let that person die, so then everyone wants their drug. Anyway, police and federal agents served warrants on this fella. The video, with its high production value, right? Also ties Schoolfield to Purdue, claiming Big Face Dollar was the flagship artist of Pipeline Entertainment. According to the State Corporation Commission, Purdue was the registered agent of a company called Pipeline Entertainment. Schoolfield, not among the defendants arrested Monday. He was taken into custody in June after police say he traveled to New York City to meet with a drug supplier. In his rap, Schoolfield seemed to consider the possibility of his eventual arrest. Among the lyrics, a line says, "If the police tried to pull me, gotta get me eluding." Man, I wish I understood what any of that meant at all. And actually, as funny,
Figure it out. Let me know.
as funny as it is, it really does make me kind of sad for these people, because there are people out there that think this is a pathway to success. This is a way to behave, and maybe I can be prosperous. And when you have people, it's just nonstop. It's nonstop when you think about it. When you have people like Jay-Z allowed into the White House by the Obama administration, Jay-Z, who still sings about the fact that he's a just mass cocaine dealer, and he's in the White House, he's in the Situation Room in the White House, and Obama's hugging him simply because he's another black guy, that's a problem. It creates a problem in a culture like these guys. Okay. That's all I got for you, Hulon. You got anything I missed?
I don't think so. I don't think I can top Big Face Dollar.
All right. Well, then let's put a bow on it and be done. Don't forget, find our blog. We try and update that about every day at feltrecoilshow.com. And there's an archive there that has every episode we've done before. You can hear them all. Plus, you can find more charities that are doing really good work around the world and deserve your money. All right. We'll see you next time for number 41 of the Felt Recoil Podcast.